The Kansas City Chiefs fell quite a few points short of a Super Bowl three-peat. So now the trek is back on towards the top of the mountain once again, where the Eagles now stand. So what is ahead for the NFL offseason? Let's take a look first at the Kansas City Chiefs and what they have to work with getting ready for this offseason. This one is one of the more obvious ones we have done so far. It's the offensive line. This was a big problem in the Super Bowl. And again, like anytime you're talking about, well, this was a gigantic problem for a team that finished 15-2, it does seem a little disingenuous. But there is a lot that needs to be done on this offensive line, given the nature of a few of the wins that Kansas City had this year and the nature of the sound and thorough ass kicking that they had to endure in that Super Bowl. So the offensive line is going to be massive for them. And yeah, like the talent around Mahomes didn't help, but I think Mahomes having a little bit more time to throw the ball down the field is really going to help set this offense up in a big time way. They're potentially losing Brown, the guard, and they basically didn't have any tackles. The good thing for them is that this is a tackle-rich draft, so that should help them out quite a bit. And happy Wednesday, sir. Thank you for popping in today. Really appreciate it. A lot of the focus for Kansas City is going to be on the pass catchers. I do think that another guy is needed, but I also do want to remind everyone that Rashee Rice should be coming back. Now, there were some legal problems going into last season that he has not been suspended for yet. Those haven't, I don't believe, been cleared up court-wise or anything like that. Hey, Toxic, how's it going? So we will see what suspension may come from that. But either way, I would presume they are going to have Rashee Rice for a little bit more than the 3 games that they had him this year. So that is the boost that they need. At least part of it. Basically, every other receiver on this team is a free agent. So they are basically going to rebuild this receiver room. I think you need... It's going to be tricky. I do think that another high-level pass catcher either way is something that this team would really, really benefit from. Whether it is a legit number 1 guy or just a very, very good Robin to the Batman that is Rashee Rice. Just don't let him drive the Batmobile. I do think that on the defense, this defense was very good, obviously, but I do think that this secondary probably needs a little bit more help. McDuffie is one of the best in the league, but they did get torched in that Super Bowl, and so I think with Reed and with Bolton as free agents, I would imagine both of them are coming back, but I think a little bit more help is needed in that secondary just to help bolster things a little bit. Crash, shout out. Thank you for popping in today. Really appreciate it. The one issue with the Kansas City Chiefs as they go into this offseason now is they have about $5 million in salary cap space and no obvious ones to cut. And I know as soon as I say that, someone is going to rush to either the chat here live on Twitch or in the comments on YouTube and say, oh, well, Travis Kelce would save them $17 million. I am willing to bet a lot that Travis Kelce ain't getting cut this year. Now, if my guy retires, maybe there's some relief coming their way, but they are going to have to get creative to figure things out this offseason. Like I said before, though, there is, I think, a bit of a silver lining here for the Kansas City Chiefs. Because there's always a silver lining for the Kansas City Chiefs. They cannot not have silver linings, which gets, a little bit frustrating at times. But I think the one big thing that helps them is their needs kind of set up in a way where maybe not necessarily the free agent class, but this offseason can really help them still at a relatively cheap number. The offensive tackle class in this draft is supposed to be very deep. And so even drafting at 31, there's a very real chance that they're going to get someone who could probably play a role on their team going forward. Wide receiver, it's not the strongest year, but it's kind of deep, but you're not going to get like that 1A, 1B guy that we were talking about with them before, but you're going to be able to get a little bit of depth at a position where you're losing like 5 guys in free agency. The reason I say the offseason could stack up pretty well for them is there are 2 past their prime, but still relatively marquee receivers that could become available in Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel. Now, this team doesn't have the resources cap-wise to trade for those guys. I don't believe, anyway. But I don't think anyone's going to trade for them. I think we have seen so many examples that there's going to, okay, well, yeah, this guy's been given permission for a trade. And every team's like, 32, no, we're good, man. Just Eat that butt, eat that dead cap, Rams, eat that dead cap, 49ers, and we'll sign you to a free agency contract. So my kind of prediction for all of that is Kupp and Debo end up as free agents after getting mucho dinero in a buyout, and then go into the sweet welcoming arms of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and that offense. So my prediction is they are able to relatively affordably get Cooper Kupp and or not and that would be absurd, or Debo Samuel as a either number one for this team or number two behind Rashee Rice. On the Philadelphia side, they could lose some big free agents here, as Zach Bond, Josh Sweat, and Brandon Graham are all potentially leaving on the defensive side. And Mekhi Becton is up for free agency coming off of a breakout season for him. The upside for them, where the Chiefs don't necessarily have this, is there's a wee bit of cap space there. They at least have enough that they can keep these guys if they want and be able to maybe add a little bit of depth. The Bond one is going to be interesting. Philadelphia just does not spend on off-the-ball linebackers. So we will see if the all-pro guy that they just plucked off of the scrap heap is going to be in their financial reality, or if his "you can win with that guy" bonus helps get them over the hump. Or not necessarily over the hump, but I guess at the other end of the hump, and ends up with him signing a big contract somewhere else. So I do think at least one of those guys is going to leave, but I do think that with that salary cap space that they have, that they're going to be able to address some of those needs, or at least keep some of those guys around. And then after that, we've talked about it before, this was last year one of the most complete teams in the National Football League. And so offensive weapons, you're set. On the defensive side, like pass rushers, you got a few. Secondary seems like you got a pretty good one there as well. So I feel like there isn't a whole lot of needs here. I do think that when you are looking at what the Eagles should do, I think there is going to be a little bit more work being done on the offensive line in the offseason here. We saw it last time, right? Like Jason Kelce retires. They're able to just kind of backfill right away. And this offensive line is one of the best O-lines in the National Football League again. This time, Becton, I would be surprised if he left. I feel like because he has already had quite a bit of adversity in his career and has found a spot where he can win and a spot that has figured out how to maximize his abilities, I would be surprised if he left. But Lane Johnson is still 35 years old, and that's a rather demanding position for a guy who is my age to be playing. So I feel like the offensive line, again, which is a strength of this draft, is going to be an area that they look to address by way of that draft, and again, start to backfill some of those positions and build up some of that depth. So all of this was to say, I don't know if a whole lot is changing with the Eagles this year. I would be surprised if Bond was still an Eagle come the start of next season, and I'd be interested to see where they kind of fill that productivity, because he was such a dominant player for them at so little money. So we'll see what they can do with that. But overall, this is more a maintenance offseason for the Eagles than it is a big splash one. Still to come this week on here on Twitch and on YouTube and the various platforms that you can watch me on. We're going to be doing starting the free agency preview. Free agency starts first week of March on this upcoming week, either tomorrow or Friday. We are going to do the best fits for the top free agents. And the next week, we will do the best, we'll pick one player to go to each team and kind of do it that way and get ready for NFL free agency. So still a lot of football talk coming up here, Couch Potato Diary and twitch.tv/primetimepk.